The hospital room smelled like bleach and lemons. Machines hummed and blinked beside my bed, counting my breaths like coins dropped into a tin. Outside the window, Atlanta's late evening sky held a smear of orange, the kind of color that makes strangers forgive each other on the freeway. Inside there was no forgiveness. My husband stood at the foot of my bed with his phone pressed to his ear and his eyes on the door. "Baby, I'm coming," he said softly, the way he used to speak to me when we shared secrets under mosquito nets in my mother's compound in Lagos. "She won't make it through the night," the doctors said. "Look, I'll explain when I get there." He didn't whisper. He didn't even turn away. The nurse, a gentle woman with tired eyes named Ms. Rosa, stared at him like he was a strange bird in her ward. "Sir," she said, "your wife." He lifted a hand. Not to bless, not to comfort. To silence. Then he lowered his voice one notch and said into the phone, "You know I love you. Hold the door for me. I'll be there in 20. He ended the call, tugged his suit jacket straight like a man preparing for a photo, and finally glanced at me. My mouth tasted like metal. My throat stung from the surgery and the tubes and the fear. He saw the fear and called it drama in his mind. I know because I had seen that same small curl at his lip when our daughter cried after a fall. He had a way of folding other people's pain into something ugly and calling it honesty. "Darius," I rasped. Even saying his name felt like lifting a bucket tied to a frayed rope. He came closer, put 2 fingers on the bed rail instead of on my hand, and gave me a smile that used to melt me. "You're strong, Nia. You'll be fine." He turned to Ms. Rosa and added, "If there are decisions to make, call me. But I really can't, she knows why." He jerked his head toward me like we were co-conspirators in a secret that had gone sour. Ms. Rosa's brows pressed together. "Sir, this is an ICU." He checked his watch. "Life doesn't stop for hospitals," he said, and he meant it. Not as courage but as permission to be cruel. I heard the soft squeak of the door as he left, the click of his expensive shoes fading down the pale hallway. The room grew bigger without him in it, and not in a good way. The machines seemed louder. My breath seemed thinner. Fear settled on my chest like a second blanket. Ms. Rosa stepped close. "Do you want me to call someone else?" He nodded. "There's a lawyer," I said, and each word hurt like a stitch pulling. "On speed dial. He knows what to do." She found my cracked phone in my bedside drawer, scrolled through my favorite contacts, and found the name, Cole and Osei Emergency. He dialed. As she waited, she placed a hand on my wrist, surprising me with the warmth in her palm. "He should have stayed," she whispered. That wasn't right. The call connected. I could hear my lawyer's measured voice even from the pillow. "Mrs. Williams, we've been expecting your call." "Activate it," I said. "All of it." "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "Once we file, there's no going back." A tiny smile touched the corner of my mouth, the first one in days that reached my eyes. "I'm sure." "Then we'll begin," he said. "And Nia, hold on." "I will," I whispered, and for the first time since the ambulance lights flashed in our driveway, I believed I could. Ms. Rosa squeezed my wrist once more, then checked the line of fluids feeding into my arm. "Breathe slow," she said. "We'll take care of you." The elevator bell chimed from the hallway, a bright, ordinary note that would mean nothing on any other night. It sang once, then the doors slid open. Footsteps crossed the floor outside. More than one pair. Voices, one low and familiar, one honey-sweet and careless, floated toward my door. The handle turned, and the door cracked open, letting the smell of his cologne blend with the bleach and the lemons. I turned my head as the door swung wider. Darius stood there, and beside him, holding his arm the way I used to, was a woman with glossy hair and a smile like a knife. In the same breath, another figure stepped from the elevator. A tall man in a blue suit carrying a thick brown envelope stamped with a gold seal. The woman in the doorway widened her smile. The man in the suit lifted the envelope and said, "Mrs. Williams, I'm here to serve." And that was where the moment held itself, tight and bright, like thunder trapped inside a drum. Before I tell you what happened next, let me tell you who I am and why the drum was already full of thunder. I was born on a Tuesday in Lagos in the heart of the rainy season. My grandmother liked to say that the sky itself washed me clean and told me secrets before it handed me to my mother. I believed her. All my life I have lived by weather and by whispers. My mother sold ankara at Balagan Market. She wrapped her headscarves like crowns and balanced bolts of fabric on her hip with the quiet strength of a tree that has learned to bend. My father drove a taxi, but he drove it like a prayer. Soft hands on the wheel, eyes always a little sad from seeing too much city and too many stories. I grew up in a house where money was counted in small stacks and generosity was measured in bowls, not in bank accounts. Whenever a neighbor fell sick, my mother cooked pepper soup and took it across the street in a steaming metal pot wrapped with cloth. Whenever my father had a good day, he came home with oranges for everyone. A full hand feeds another, he liked to say. And yet, in our house, there was a locked trunk at the foot of my grandmother's bed. It was carved with birds and vines and stories I didn't yet know. It holds our past, she told me, resting her hand on my hair. And one day, it will open our future. I didn't understand then, but I listened. I always listened. That is another thing about me. While other children chased kites made from old newspapers and twine, I chased sentences. I chased the words other people threw away when they thought no one was listening. Words like trust, title, survey, royalty. Words that belonged to the locked trunk. When I was 16, a letter came in a stiff envelope with a foreign stamp. A woman my grandmother's sister had worked for in Ghana, a woman with a heart as wide as the sea, had passed away and left something to the girl who reads and listens. Land, heirs, papers that meant power far away from our street and our small stacks of money. My grandmother unlocked the trunk. Inside, stacked like church hymnals, were more papers. Deed, contracts, tenancies that had been in our family longer than I had been alive. Why didn't we use these? I asked, confused and a little angry. Why did we sell ankara and drive taxis while this sat in a box? Grandmother cupped my face. Because money is loud and draws thieves. Land is quiet and remembers who tends it. You, Nia, will tend it in the open when you are ready. She sent me to school. Not just any school. The kind of school with air conditioning and new pens that didn't leak. The kind that made girls dream in a bigger language. I studied finance because I loved the way numbers spoke truth when people wouldn't. At 20, I came to Atlanta on a scholarship with 2 suitcases and a head wrapped in my mother's courage. That was where I met him. Darius had a smile that knew its own power and a voice like smooth cocoa. He said he liked the way I said his name, liked the Lagos in my laughter, liked the way I found the cheapest vegetables and turned them into something that tasted like home. He was from Savannah, a son of the South, and he knew how to fix broken things with his hands. He could charm a grumpy landlord, calm a crying baby in the church nursery, or make a cashier forget she just worked a 9-hour shift on her feet. People trusted him too quickly. I was one of those people. When he asked about my family, I told him about markets and taxis and the metal pot wrapped in cloth. I did not tell him about the trunk. My grandmother had said, when a calabash floats on the river, it doesn't shout its name. The river already knows. I wanted a man who loved me for me, not for whatever that trunk meant for our future. We married under a live oak with fairy lights threaded through its branches. My mother cried and wiped her face with the same efficiency she used to fold fabrics. My father hugged Darius and whispered something that made him nod and then forget. My grandmother smiled like an old cat who knew the tricks of all the mice in the world. The first years tasted sweet. We rented a small house in Decatur with a creaky porch and a stubborn door. On Sundays, I stirred jollof on the stove while Darius fixed the wobbly table leg and talked about opening a shop. Handmade furniture, he said. Custom pieces for people who wanted stories in their wood. I worked at a non-profit that helped small landlords keep their buildings safe and fair. It felt right. A public job that did good, a private life that felt safe, and my trunk. No longer under a bed but translated into trusts and LLCs and quiet lawyers, breathing under the floorboards of my life. But dreams grow teeth if they go hungry. Darius's shop needed money. He was proud, too proud to take a slow loan from a boring bank or to let me interfere. He loved the idea of a big jump, the kind that makes headlines on local news. He found a space with tall windows and paid too much for it. He bought tools with shiny brand names, and he hired a cousin who liked to take long lunches. The math didn't work, but we smiled like it did. We smiled for a long time. Then came the crack. It was not loud. Cracks rarely are. "Can you ask your people for help?" he said one night, the words casual like the question was about red pepper or green. "Investors. My people," I asked as I rinsed rice in a bowl. "You know," he said, and his eyes flicked away. "The foundation. The family thing." The family thing he never named, though I had never hidden the existence of a trust. I hid its size and its shape because those were sharp and could cut us both. "The foundation pays for scholarships and clinics," I said carefully. "Not furniture." He laughed once, a short, sharp sound. "Right. Clinics. Not furniture. Got it." We went to bed with our backs facing each other. In the quiet, I remembered my grandmother's proverb. If a man stares too long at a yam barn, his hunger becomes anger. Time marched with its usual rude feet. The landlord of the shop called. The cousins stopped coming. The electric bill developed a second page. Darius's mouth tightened into lines that lasted even when he smiled. And then, one afternoon, I found a message on his tablet because he forgot to log out and because temptation is a snake in bright leaves. Her name was Jade. The kind of name mothers give to daughters when they want the world to call them precious and strong. She sent selfies taken in front of mirrors with perfect light. She asked Darius how his queen was with a laughing emoji and then sent a second message without the joke. "Miss you, you coming tonight?" I did not scream. I put the tablet down like it was a sleeping baby. I went to the kitchen and washed a cup that wasn't dirty. I thought about love and need and the small ways two people can fail each other every day. I thought about how money makes lazy lies sound like brave truths. That evening, I cooked stew and didn't mention the messages. Darius ate fast like he was late for something. When he stood to go, he looked at the clock on the wall instead of at me. "Late delivery," he said. "Drive safe," I said. He kissed my cheek like you kiss an old auntie you respect but don't listen to. I watched the tail lights of his truck disappear, and then I went to my desk and wrote a note to my lawyers with a subject line I had prayed I would never use. Protection plan. Months later, I woke with a fever that lifted the ceiling and pressed it down again. There was a pain along my side like a long hand squeezing. I tried to stand and the kitchen tiles jumped up to meet me. I remember the bowl smashing, the rice skittering across the floor like little teeth, the cabinets looking down at me with no pity at all. The ambulance lights smeared themselves across the living room like paint. Darius hovered, tapping his phone, looking useful and feeling trapped. The EMT asked him about allergies and medications, and he answered like a student guessing on a test. At the hospital, they cut away my shirt and pushed cold air and sharp light into places that were used to warmth and privacy. Words like sepsis and perforation flew over my head and stuck to the white ceiling where all the desperate words go. For days, time was a wet rope. I climbed it hand over hand while the doctors worked and the nurses prayed their quiet prayers under their breath. Darius came at odd hours, always smelling faintly of sawdust and cologne that wasn't mine. He brought flowers once and left them on a chair like a trophy. When the surgeon explained the risks of a second procedure, Darius's eyes slid to his phone again, and his thumb moved, always moving, sending words I couldn't hear to a world I could not enter. Then came the night he said, "Life doesn't stop for hospitals," and walked out. I lay very still and listened for the sound of my grandmother's voice and heard, instead, my own, steady, stubborn, saying names into the phone. "Mr. Cole. Auntie Beezy. Uncle Ose. Activate it," I told them. "All of it. If you think this is a story about money, you are wrong. This is a story about choosing quietly for so long that when you finally choose loudly, the world thinks it is thunder. The estate the world would later scream about. 500 million in property and land and shares and things that wear price tags instead of names, was not a sudden storm. It was rain gathered over seasons, guided by old hands and older wisdom. Hidden so I could live like a normal woman who buys her own tomatoes and laughs loudly on porches. I kept it quiet because I wanted a simple love. I kept it quiet because men who fall in love with money don't stay in love with women. I kept it quiet because my grandmother's ghost still sat on the edge of my bed in the evenings and told me, "The lion knows he is a lion. He does not need to roar every minute." The elevator bell chimed. The door opened. And there we were again in the bright white now. Me in a bed with tubes, Ms. Rosa with her gentle hands, Darius in the doorway with his pretty shadow, and the man with the blue suit and the gold-sealed envelope. "Mrs. Williams," the suited man said, stepping inside. "By order of the Fulton County Court, I have documents requiring your signature and documents to serve on Mr. Darius Williams." Darius blinked. "Serve me?" He laughed and shook his head. "My wife is sick, man. Read the room." "Actually," the man said, turning the envelope in his hands like a key, "it's about the room, and the houses, and the companies, and the trusts." Jade's fingers tightened on Darius's arm. Her smile lost one tooth of its sharpness. I reached for the pen Ms. Rosa placed between my fingers. My hand shook, not from fear but from the anesthesia that still wore my body like a borrowed coat. I wrote my name, letter by letter, and as I finished the last loop in the W, the machines at my side beeped in a new rhythm. Ms. Rosa's head jerked toward the monitor. "Nurse," the doctor called from the hallway, stepping quick, eyes on the numbers climbing in the green light. "Pressure's changing," Ms. Rosa said. "She needs." The door banged open wider. Darius stepped in front of the suited man as if his body could block paper. "What is this?" he demanded. "What is this?" The man calmly broke the seal and drew out the first document. A restraining order regarding all properties held in the Oriaku Trust and its subsidiaries, including the residence at. "Restraining order," Darius sputtered. "Against me. Against any party seeking to sell, mortgage, encumber or enter," the man recited, "without explicit written consent from the grantor, Mrs. Nia Oriaku Williams." Jade spoke for the first time, her voice small. "Darius, let's go." He did not move. He did not look at me. He looked at the papers like a man staring at a language he never learned. The doctor reached my other side, adjusting the drip. The beeping evened, then stuttered, then steadied again. "You're embarrassing yourself," Darius hissed, finally turning toward me. His eyes glittering. A look he saved for when he felt cornered and wanted someone to bleed for it. "We are married. What trust? What order? What is all this drama?" The suited man didn't flinch. "There is also a notice," he said, pulling a second set of pages, "to vacate and desist regarding a downtown condominium registered under your girlfriend's name but purchased with funds diverted from Oriaku subsidiaries." Jade's hand fell from Darius's arm like a leaf let go by a tired tree. She took a small step back. I spoke, and my voice was not loud, but it filled the room anyway. "Darius," I said, "I told you our family is quiet. I never told you we are small." He stared at me as if I had grown a second face. "You left me to die," I said softly. The words were not a shout. They were a door that had finally been shut. "So I left you with what you brought." He started to speak, but the doctor lifted a palm. "Not now," he warned. "Step back." Darius looked around, the doctor's stern eyes, Ms. Rosa's steady hands, the man in the suit with his serious mouth, the woman beside him whose smile had run away, and he understood something at last. The room no longer belonged to him. The pen lay warm in my fingers. The signature dried on the page like new paint. Somewhere in the city, a clerk stamped a file, a server queued an email, a lock schedule changed on a dozen doors. In a building under construction, men in hard hats would arrive tomorrow to a sign that read "Site closed. Order by court." At a bank, a number on a screen turned from accessible to restricted. In a condo downtown, a keycard blinked red instead of green. 1,000 quiet choices over 1,000 quiet days had gathered themselves and stood beside me like family. Darius swallowed. "Nia," he said, trying to make my name gentle again. Think about the shop. Think about us. Us. I repeated, and even the machines seemed to wait for my answer. The doctor leaned in to adjust another line. Mrs. Williams, he said, we need to take you down for imaging now. Your numbers are shifting. We can talk after. Ms. Rosa squeezed my hand. The suited man tucked the signed pages back into the envelope and held out the notice he had for Darius, firm but not unkind. Sir, he said, you've been served. Darius took the papers like they were hot. Jade turned and left, her heels tapping a quick apology down the hall. The orderlies arrived with a rolling stretcher. The room moved in busy lines around me. Clicks, snaps, wheels, quiet orders. I stared at the ceiling as they pushed me toward the door. The lemon bleach smell thinned into the smell of metal and elevators and floor wax. We passed Darius in the doorway. He stepped back without meaning to, making space he had never made before. I heard him breathe in, a shaky breath like the first time a man learns he is not the strongest person in the room. The elevator chimed. Ms. Rosa wiped a damp curl from my forehead. You're all right, she whispered. You're all right. The doors slid open to a bright, unforgiving light. And then I heard another voice, low, composed, unhurried, calling my name from behind the closing doors. Nia, it said. Wait. There is one more document we need you to sign before your procedure. The one that names your successor trustee in case. The one that keeps every piece safe, the voice finished. The doors began to shut. Through the narrowing space, I saw Darius lift the notice in his hand. His mouth opening to say something. Apology, anger, plea, I could not yet tell. Hold the doors, Ms. Rosa called. But the doors kept sliding. The machine beside my head ticked up one more bright green number. The suited man stepped forward, arm outstretched, the final document ready, the pen poised. And as the doors closed with a soft final sound, I felt the stretcher lurch, the lights blur, and the world tip. Everything went white. The white wasn't death. It was a hallway of light, cold, humming, and the sound of rubber saws and clipped voices. Something pressed on my tongue. Someone said my name in a way that told me they meant to keep me here on this side of the light. Nia, squeeze my hand. I found the hand and squeezed. It was small and warm. Ms. Rosa. The stretcher jolted, then slid into a new room that smelled like cold air and old coins. The man in the blue suit kept pace beside us, breath easy, as if court papers were a kind of oxygen he had lived on for years. Another voice joined, deeper, familiar in a different way. It's Osei, it said. I'm here. Sir, you can't. A tech began. I won't crowd, Osei said. His face leaned into my field of view, salt at his temples, eyes that saw through nonsense. You did well. One more signature so the lions you fed for years will stand over the house all night, even if you sleep. He slid a hard plastic clipboard onto the rail and steadied it with 2 fingers. The paper at the top was short, clear. Successor trustee appointment. Auntie Beezy's name waited for my hand. My grandmother's niece. The one who could count money by sound alone and hold a room still just by standing in a doorway. I took the pen, scrawled my name like a child's. Ugly but enough. And a tech gently moved the board away while the doctor fastened a new monitor to my finger. Thank you, Osei murmured. Rest now. The world went dim again, sound stretching out like a string underwater. When I surfaced, the air was cooler. The night pressed its face against the window. Machines blinked like small towns seen from a high road. You're back, Ms. Rosa said softly. The surgeon says it went well. We're watching you close. How long? My voice was a dry leaf. 3 hours, she said. You scared us. But you're stubborn. I can tell. A smile tugged at my mouth. My grandmother says stubbornness is a walking stick. It helps you climb, but it also pokes people. Ms. Rosa laughed once. Quiet, grateful. Then keep yours. You'll need it. She helped me sip water through a straw. Each swallow felt like I was learning a new word. The door clicked open and Osei stepped in, letting the corridor light cut a thin, bright line across the floor. He stood a respectful distance from the bed, the envelope under his arm now thicker, heavier, full of my quiet years doing loud work at last. "Mrs. Williams," he said, and then, "Nia." We made noise. I whispered. He nodded. Enough to wake the ones who were sleeping with stolen bread under their pillows. "My husband. He tried to follow you down." Security asked him to wait. Osei's tone was neutral, but the corners of his mouth were iron. "He made calls. A lot of calls. By then, our filings were already in the clerk's queue. The bank acted. The property managers acted. Your foundation chair acted. Do you want details now or later?" "Now," I said. "If I listen, I forget to hurt." Osei gave a small bow as if we were in my grandmother's parlor instead of an ICU. Then he reported the way only a good lawyer can. Plain words, clean edges. "At 7:30, he said, checking his watch. "We filed emergency protective orders on the Oriaku Holdings, Atlanta, Savannah, Accra, Lagos. At 7:40, Fulton County stamped them. At 7:42, the banks acknowledged the restrictions. At 7:50, the foundation treasurer froze discretionary transfers. At 7:55, the property security teams were told to enforce the new access lists. Mr. Williams's keycards no longer work for any Oriaku site." He paused. "I let the information settle like dust that shows you where the furniture really is." "What did he do?" I asked. "He tried to move $250,000 from a vendor float account at Oriaku Development," Osei said. "He had login credentials we didn't know he had, likely from a cousin who did a contract job last year. The bank flagged it. We have the screenshots. We'll share with the DA if you wish." My chest tightened for a new reason. "I wanted to keep him safe from his worst self," I said. "That's why I hid the walls. Now he is hurting himself on them in front of everyone. Men who kick doors often forget someone is holding the hinges," Osei said simply. "You have held them for too long alone." I let that truth sit and burn. Then I asked the question that had been tapping at the back of my mind since the stretcher rolled. "The shop?" "His lease is a private matter between him and the landlord," Osei said carefully. "What touched your trust we moved on. The rest will have to answer to time and to business sense." "But..." He opened the envelope and pulled a photograph. The storefront with tall windows and a sign that said Williams and Willow in soft gold. On the glass was a small square of paper. "Closed for inventory." "This was placed by the owner," Osei said. "Not at our request. He told our investigator he fears Mr. Williams would sell tools at midnight. He is protecting his own investment." I stared at the photo. The hand-lettered sign. The way the light inside turned the empty room into a mirror. "I didn't want this," I whispered. "I know," Osei said. "But you wanted to live. And you wanted the work of 3 generations to keep feeding people who think they will never be invited to the table. That is what you chose tonight. We will not apologize for that." Something in me, tired and loyal to my old dreams, still tried to rise and argue. It lay back down when I pictured Darius at the hospital door, saying life doesn't stop, phone pressed to the ear that used to find my breath in the dark. "Jade?" I asked, and the name made Ms. Rosa's brows go up, though she kept her gaze on the monitor. "She left," Osei said. "But not far. She sat in the lobby until a man arrived in a navy blazer with a clipboard. Your process server." He looked down at his notes. "She accepted a notice regarding the condo." She cried. Then she stopped crying. "Then she left with a different man." "What different?" "Not your husband," Osei said. "A developer I have seen before in land court. He smiles with his teeth and his eyes at different times. He may be the one who put the idea of caching and flipping your edge lots in Darius's head. We'll know more tomorrow." Closed my eyes. The city map I keep in my mind sparked to life. Streets like stitched seams, small houses with fresh paint, old brick boxes holding new clinics and co-ops, corner lots turned into gardens that make grandmothers cry because someone finally planted okra where they once only saw weeds. Men in navy blazers had never set those tables. Women with pots and borrowed ladders had. Tomorrow, I said, tasting the word. So we must reach it. We will, Ms. Rosa said, practical as a song. Sleep took me again, kinder now that it had laid down its needles. When I woke, it was to the soft clack of blinds and the low hum of early morning. My mouth felt less like paper. A golden thread of dawn had found the edge of the window and was trying its best to get in. Ms. Rosa moved quietly, as if someone had told her my thoughts were fragile glass. Vitals look better, she said, tapping notes into her tablet. You're a stubborn one. I like that. Any visitors? Yes. She hesitated. He came at 4, she said. Security told him visiting hours start at 7. He got loud. He calmed down. He asked for a chaplain. The chaplain listened to him. That man can listen to a brick wall. Then your husband left. What did he say to the chaplain? That he messed up, she said. But not in the way you wanted him to mean. He nodded. I knew that kind of confession. The kind that is asking for an audience, not an answer. At 6, the door opened and a small parade came in. Osei. His partner, Miss Cole, with her calm voice and fast mind, an older woman in a wrapper and headscarf carrying the authority of a whole village in her purse, Auntie Beezy, and a younger paralegal in sneakers with a printer under his arm like a baby. Auntie, I breathed, and my voice wobbled. She leaned over me, smelled like shea and mint, and touched my forehead with 2 fingers. Your grandmother is laughing in her grave and shaking her head, she said. You nearly made me a trustee and a widow in one night. You would do both well, I said, and we both smiled the tired smile of women who have pulled boats alone against the current and still found time to pass soup through a fence to a hungry neighbor. Business followed, but it wore soft shoes. Miss Cole spoke in steps. We filed the protective orders, she said, and served your husband and his companion. We also filed limited no-contact directives with your property teams so no one is turned into a bad guy at a front desk. Security at your residence in Decatur has a list. He can collect clothing and personal items tomorrow at noon with a police escort. We recommend you not return there. I wasn't planning to, I said. We have already opened your Buckhead apartment, she continued. It was staged for guests. We put sheets on the bed and stocked the fridge. Beezy will stay there until you're discharged. We've also alerted the foundation board. They sent love and 27 text messages asking if you need soup. Soup travels faster than worry, Auntie Beezy said. I told them to send plantains. Funds. Yes. Stable, Miss Cole said. Some smoke, but we put out the small fires. There is one more thing. It's the reason we came early. Her eyes flicked to Osei. He nodded, and she handed me a printout, the kind of cheap paper that breaks big news without shame. At the top was a case caption. In the matter of the conservatorship of Nia Oriaka Williams. Petitioner. Darius Williams. My body went cold in the places the fever had avoided. Conservatorship. He filed at 2 in the morning, Ms. Cole said. He claimed you are incapacitated and need him to manage all property and medical decisions. He attached a doctor's note. Sloppy, unsigned, and from no one on your care team. He also attached bank statements from accounts he shouldn't even know exist. How did? Probably the cousin, Osei said. He's sloppy with passwords. Or he photographed papers on your desk while you were in the bathroom one day. We will find the leak. The hearing is at 9 today. Emergency calendar. A judge will decide whether to issue a temporary order. A judge could hand him the keys, I said, the words flat as a dead phone. For a day. For a week. Long enough to cause damage, Ms. Cole said. We won't let that happen. But we need you to speak. The judge can take a video statement if the doctor approves. I will speak, I said. Even if my voice comes through a straw. Osei gave a small, rare smile. Good. Judges like truth. They also like women who bleed and still speak without wasting words. The paralegal plugged his portable printer into the wall and started feeding it pages. Auntie Beezy opened her bag and pulled out a small jar of palm wine, the kind women keep for medicine and moments. She didn't offer it. She just set it on the table like a talisman and patted it twice. "Tell me what I must say," I told Miss Cole. "Tell the truth," she said. "That you are lucid. That you appointed a successor trustee because you are a careful person, not a dying one. That your husband left against medical advice to attend to his mistress and then tried to move funds. That you wish to retain control of your body and your work. We will carry the law. You carry the human. And the doctor." "He signed a statement at 6 that you are competent to direct your affairs," Miss Cole said. "He will dial in to say it again. You chose a hospital with good people. People are the estate," Auntie Beezy said. "Land is only where we set the table." The clock scraped toward 7. The early nurse brought in a tray and set it down like the first small gift of morning. A cup of broth, a slice of toast, more water. I took 3 spoons and felt the heat go out through my fingers like light. My phone, freshly charged and free at last from Darius's hand, buzzed where Ms. Rosa had set it in a round plastic cup. Messages blinked across the screen like birds landing on a wire. I ignored all from numbers I didn't know. I opened one from my mother. "My daughter. I dreamed of rain. The rain washed a snake from the door. I woke and prayed. Call when you can. Your father will only ask if you have eaten." I texted back, "I have eaten. The snake has no home here. Love you." Another buzz. A number I did know. "The foundation board chair. We stand with you. Don't worry about the gala. We will move the date. Focus on breath." I set the phone down. Breath was a good task. Breath is a job too. At 8:30, the doctor rolled a tower with a camera to my bedside. "We'll keep this brief," he said. "You'll be tired after. But we can do it." He checked the lens, adjusted the light, nodded to Ms. Cole. She opened a laptop on the tray table. The screen lit up with a courtroom I knew too well. Pale walls, state flag, an old wooden clock that had watched too many lives try to fix themselves in 20 minutes. A clerk appeared, young and careful. Then the judge. Gray hair cut close, eyes that looked like they had seen a lot and forgiven less. We waited. A square appeared on the screen with Darius in it, tie crooked, jaw set. He looked handsome in the way that fools and cameras love. I felt the old ache tug and then sit down and be quiet. "Case of Oriaka Williams," the clerk called. "Good morning," the judge said. "I have reviewed the petition for temporary conservatorship. Counsel." Darius's lawyer started fast, as if speed could turn weak words into strong ones. "Your Honor, Mrs. Williams has been in intensive care. She is unable to manage her vast and complex assets. Mr. Williams is her husband." Miss Cole spoke like a scalpel. "Your Honor, we have affidavits from treating physicians stating Mrs. Williams is lucid and capable. We also have evidence of attempted misappropriation by the petitioner. We ask that the petition be denied and that the court admonish the petitioner from further interference." The judge looked at me through the camera. "Mrs. Williams, can you hear me?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice was thin but it did not shake. "Do you understand these proceedings?" "Yes." "Do you wish your husband to manage your person or property?" "No," I said. "I wish him to leave both alone." Darius swallowed, looked down, then up. His eyes found the camera like he could find me through it. "Nia," he said, breaking protocol, forgetting the judge, the law, the world. "You know I love you." Auntie Beezy, out of the camera's range, made a small sound in her throat and it held more history than any romance. "I know what love is," I said. "It stays when the machines beep and the lemon smell burns your nose. It holds your hand without looking at the clock. It does not tell another woman to hold the door while it checks if you'll survive the night." The judge's mouth ticked at one corner. Not a smile. Something like respect struggling through a long morning. "Mrs. Williams," he said, "what is your plan for your affairs during your recovery?" "My lawyers and my aunt will act under the trust instruments we filed with the court. I have signed a successor trustee designation if I weaken. But I am not weak today. I will review decisions. I will sign what needs my hand. My doctors will tell me when to sleep. The judge nodded. He shuffled papers. Petition is denied, he said. Petitioner is ordered to refrain from contacting third parties regarding respondents' assets. We will set a status conference next week if necessary. He looked at Darius with a tired kindness. Son, go fix your life somewhere else, he said. Not here. The clerk read the orders. The squares blinked out one by one until only our reflection remained in the black screen. Ms. Rosa exhaled. Osei sat at last, as if a string inside him had been allowed to relax. Ms. Cole closed her laptop like a book that had ended well for now. Auntie Beezy took my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles, and whispered a prayer under her breath that tasted like palm wine and dawn. Rest, the doctor said. You did enough for 3 mornings. I laid my head back and let the pillow take me. For a moment, the world was only breath and the small sound of victory cleaning the floor. Then Ms. Rosa came back in with her careful step and a new envelope. The paper was thin, the seal plain. This was just delivered by hospital security, she said. Addressed to you. No return name. Osei took it, turned it, felt the edges. He slid a letter out, scanned it, and his face, usually made of courthouse stone, changed. What? Asked. He handed the letter to me. The words were short, hand-printed in neat block letters, as if the writer had learned to make each one behave. Ms. Oriaka Williams. You don't know me. I am the bookkeeper at Williams & Willow. Mr. Williams had me change numbers on invoices. I did it. I was wrong. Today, a man in a navy blazer told him to move your Beltline parcels fast. He said he can make the city rezone quiet, if he gets a cut. They plan to meet at noon at the shop. Please stop them. I will testify. Noon, Miss Cole said, checking the clock. That's 2.5 hours. I felt the old map spark again. The Beltline lots like teeth the city would chew on once it got them. Land that should hold a clinic and a library and a night market where kids could buy Puff Puff and comics at the same stall. I'm not leaving this bed, I said. But we are not letting them take a single grain of soil. Osei was already dialing. I'll get an injunction and a camera on that meeting, he said. And a patrol car to pass by twice, then a 3rd time. And me, Auntie Beezy said, tying her scarf tighter. I will go and stand in the doorway. Let them try to pass an old woman who knows each brick by name. The room moved with new purpose. Papers, calls, quiet commands. I lay and watched the window brighten. The lemon smell was still there, but it had learned its place. Ms. Rosa tucked the sheet over my feet. You rest, she said, as if she were promising to sit on the porch and watch the road while I slept inside. Closed my eyes. For a moment, sleep rose to meet me gentle. Then my phone buzzed again. Not a message. Oh. The name on the screen made my heart slow, then kick. I let it ring twice. I let it ring 3 times for. Then I hit accept and lifted the phone to my ear. Hello, I said, and my voice was soft as cloth. Jade's breath crackled on the line. When she spoke, the knife was gone from her smile. He doesn't know I'm calling, she said. But you need to hear this. He's not meeting only a developer. He's meeting someone from your side. Someone who knows your maps and your fences. Someone who's selling you from inside. The line hissed, then went quiet. Who? Asked. The answer came like a stone dropping down a well. Your foundation, she whispered. One of the board. The call ended. Outside the window, the sun cleared the hospital roof and fell full into the room. Who? Auntie Beezy asked, reading my face without needing words. I stared at the phone, at the empty black screen that had just spoken, and felt the ground tilt under the bed again. Not from fever this time, but from a new fault line opening in a place I had trusted most. We thought the wall was outside, I said slowly. Maybe it's in the parlor. And the chapter, like the morning, held its breath. The words board member clung to the air like smoke, and I could almost hear the hum of the conversation that had taken place in the dark corners of my life, out of sight, while I had been busy tending to my dreams. The board, the very people I trusted to carry the weight of our legacy, had been feeding on the scraps of my quiet ambitions, moving unseen, like termites nibbling away at the foundation of everything I had built. My phone lay heavy in my lap, and I stared at it as though it had somehow betrayed me. Jade's voice echoed in my mind. "One of your board." "Oh, which one?" Auntie Beezy, standing by the window with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the morning light outside, sensed my thoughts before I could speak them. "You've kept your trust too close, Nia. Not everyone on that board is your friend. Some of them want what you've built, and they'll sell you for it. If they've found the way in, they're moving quickly." I could hear her words wrapping around me like a cloak, warm but suffocating. The foundation, my protection, my legacy, was a structure I had leaned on for so long, never questioning, always trusting. But now, with every word Auntie Beezy spoke, a cold realization bloomed inside me. This wasn't just about Darius's betrayal. This wasn't just about his affairs or his careless handling of our lives. It was about the vultures in the shadows, people who would eat me alive if they got the chance. I turned to Osei, who had been standing by the door, his face unreadable, his phone already in hand, likely making the next move in what was now a full-scale war. "Find out who," I said, my voice steady, though the storm was brewing beneath the calm. "I need names. I need them now." Osei nodded, his expression firm. "We'll get to the bottom of it," he said. "But don't let your guard down. It's one thing to be betrayed by Darius. It's another to be attacked by those who should be in your corner." I glanced at the monitor beside me, where my heart rate ticked along like a metronome, steady, predictable. I had survived a battle just to get here. Survived what should have been a death sentence. But what good was survival if it was only to watch everything crumble from the inside? I swallowed hard. "We've got to move fast. If we don't, I'll lose everything." The door to my room creaked open, and Ms. Rosa stepped in, her face taut with concern. "There's a call for you," she said, her voice a little more urgent than usual. "It's a lawyer from the foundation. They want to speak with you." I frowned. The foundation had never reached out directly to me before. At least, not without Osei or Auntie Beezy acting as intermediaries. My instincts flared, and I didn't trust this. Not for a second. "Take the call," Auntie Beezy said. "But be careful. Whoever it is might be a part of the web they've spun. Watch your words." I nodded, my fingers cold as I took the phone from Ms. Rosa. I cleared my throat before speaking, ready to face whatever was coming next. "This is Nia Williams." "Mrs. Williams," the voice on the other end said. It was smooth, too smooth. "This is Gerald Hayes, legal counsel for the Oriaku Foundation. I wanted to reach out personally regarding the recent events. We've received news of your hospitalization, and I'm afraid we need to discuss the status of the board and your role within the foundation." My grip tightened on the phone. Gerald Hayes. I knew that name. He had always been present at the foundation's meetings. His smile polite but with that edge that made you wonder if he was measuring every word you said for his own gain. "Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Hayes," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the pounding in my chest. "I know something's going on. I know someone's trying to take my place. I need to know who's been making moves behind my back." There was a pause, a hesitation before Hayes spoke again, his tone now cautious. "Mrs. Williams, I'm not sure where this is coming from, but the foundation has always operated with transparency. We've all worked hard for the betterment of the community and to honor your family's legacy. But if there are concerns, it might be best to address them directly with the board. The people in charge." I felt the blood rush to my face, a mixture of anger and disbelief. People in charge. What a joke. He was one of those people. So was everyone else I had trusted. "Don't play games with me, Gerald," I snapped, leaning forward in my bed. "You've all been in on it, haven't you? Darius, Jade, and now you. You think I don't know what you're doing?" There was another long silence on the line, and I could hear the faintest rustle of papers in the background. Gerald Hayes had lost his polished edge. His voice now took on a defensive tone. Mrs. Williams, you need to be careful. Accusations like this. They're dangerous, especially considering your current condition. If you continue down this path, it could cause irreversible damage to your reputation and your family's legacy. I suggest you speak with the board before taking further action. I felt a rush of heat, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. My legacy. You don't get to tell me what's dangerous. You've already made your move, and I'm not backing down now. A cold laugh echoed from his side of the call. Then you should know, he said slowly, that if you proceed with this, you may be signing your own death certificate. No one wants to see you lose everything, Mrs. Williams. But if you push us, there will be nothing left to save. The line went dead. I sat in silence, the weight of his words crashing into me like a cold wave. I had known that the world I had built, the foundation that had been my lifeline, was full of cracks. But to hear the true ugliness of it in Gerald's voice, felt like a final blow. The reality was worse than I had imagined. They didn't care about me. They only cared about keeping the power they had stolen. I turned to Auntie Beezy, who was watching me with a deep, knowing look. He's threatening me, I said, my voice low. They're all in on it. Darius, Jade, Gerald, the board. They're all connected. They've been waiting for me to fall. She nodded, her expression grim. I know, Nia. But you're still here. And now they've made the mistake of showing their hands. They think they can break you, but they've forgotten one thing. What's that? Asked my voice hoarse. You, she said firmly, are a daughter of this land. And no one here is forgotten by the earth they walk on. You're stronger than they'll ever be. It's time to remind them. I closed my eyes and let her words settle like a stone dropped in the deep of a river. I wasn't done yet. I wasn't close to done. This fight had only just begun. Ms. Rosa, I called softly, and she entered the room with quiet steps. Get me my clothes. I need to get out of here. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't ask questions. She just nodded and began to gather the items I would need. The plan had shifted. What I needed now wasn't just medical recovery. It was taking back what was mine, and exposing the rats who thought they could destroy me. As Ms. Rosa left, Osei approached again, this time with a file under his arm. He opened it, showing me a thick stack of documents. Transaction records, bank statements, messages, and photos. These, he said, his voice quiet, are the things that tie them all together. I've already made the calls. We have everything we need to bring them down. I nodded, my heart hammering in my chest. I was done waiting for other people to save me. I was going to save myself. And I would do whatever it took to make them regret the day they thought I was weak. This fight isn't over, I said, more to myself than to anyone in the room. And when it's done, they'll know exactly who they've been dealing with. Osei gave me a firm nod, his usual calm demeanor returning. We'll make sure of it. The time had come to turn the tables. The game was no longer about survival, it was about vengeance. The hospital room felt like a cage. It wasn't just the sterile walls or the machines that beeped with each breath I took. It was the weight of what had been done to me, the betrayal that hung in the air like smoke, invisible but suffocating. I had been through a storm, a hurricane of pain and loss, and now that the calm was settling in, I was finally ready to strike back. Ms. Rosa returned with a fresh set of clothes, a hospital gown replaced by something more like my usual style, a soft cream blouse and slacks. I dressed slowly, the weight of the task ahead pressing on me, but there was something in my bones now, a kind of clarity, a purpose that had been absent in the days before. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a woman defeated by sickness or betrayal. I saw someone who was about to take everything back. Are you sure about this, Nia? Osei's voice broke through the silence, his eyes steady on me. His lawyer instincts were sharp, always calculating the risks, always analyzing. This will make it all public. You'll have to expose your family, your past. Everything. I nodded, buttoning the top of my blouse. Let them see. Let them know. I have nothing left to lose. They've already taken everything from me, Except for what's mine. Auntie Beezy, standing near the door, raised an eyebrow. You'll fight, but you'll fight smart. Don't get reckless. I'm not reckless, I said, my voice sharper than I expected. I'm angry. And when I'm angry, I can think clearly. Osei held up the stack of papers. These will be crucial. But if we push too hard too soon, it could backfire. We need a plan. I took a breath and nodded. I don't need plans anymore. I need action. But I'll take your advice. We push when it counts, and we make them regret the day they ever thought they could take from me. Ms. Rosa, still standing by the door, spoke up softly, her voice calm as always. You know, Mrs. Williams, there's something that might help you clear the air. If you want your family's story to be known, you could consider taking a public stance on the estate, exposing the truth about Darius and Jade. I glanced at her, my curiosity piqued. Public? How? Ms. Rosa's eyes shone with understanding. Your grandmother's name, the legacy you carry. It deserves to be seen for what it really is. Not for the lies and the falsehoods they've spread. If you're ready to step into the spotlight, we can turn this around. I nodded slowly. It was exactly what I needed. A way to take back control, to show the world that my family's legacy was not for the taking. It was time to make sure Darius and the rest of them understood that this wasn't just about the money. It was about the history, the power, the influence they thought they could erase. Let's do it, I said. But I want them to hear it from me. Auntie Beezy smiled, her pride shining through. That's the Nia I know. I could feel the weight of the decision settling around me like a suit of armor. There was no going back now. By the time we were finished, the plan had taken shape. Osei and I worked through the details, organizing everything. The lawyer's office would file a motion for full conservatorship, and the public statement would be made from there. It would be part legal battle, part family history, part reckoning. At noon, I was escorted out of the hospital in a wheelchair, a hospital-issued blanket draped over my legs, my face carefully neutral, but inside I was burning. We passed through the lobby with minimal attention. No reporters had shown up yet. Darius's scheme had been too quick for that, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they caught wind of the story. By the time I was out of the car and on my way to the lawyer's office, I felt the first flutter of nerves. The press would be all over it. The world would know exactly what had happened. And yet I felt strangely calm. This was it. The storm was about to break, and I was ready. Inside the lawyer's office, the space felt colder, more professional than the warmth of the hospital had been. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with legal tomes, and the sound of the air conditioning buzzed faintly in the background. Osei was already on the phone with the media team, organizing the press release. I sat in the back office, feeling the tension build as we waited for the right moment. Auntie Beezy sat beside me, her fingers tracing the rim of her tea cup absent-mindedly. You're doing the right thing, she said softly. But you mustn't let your heart lead too much. This will be public, and the world doesn't always see things the way we do. They'll call you names, Nia. They'll say you're bitter, vindictive. They'll make excuses for Darius. I looked at her, my throat tight. I don't care what they say. The truth will come out. And when it does, they'll be the ones who have to answer for what they've done. She nodded, and then her gaze softened. Just don't let the world change you. Keep your truth. Hold it like your mother did. Like your grandmother did. Before I could respond, Osei came into the room, his expression serious. It's time. We've got the press ready. The statement will go live in the next 5 minutes. I stood, my legs feeling strong under me despite the exhaustion. Let's do it. The room quieted as I walked up to the desk and took the microphone. The lawyer, Cole, was already standing behind me, prepared to offer legal support, but this moment was mine. The camera light flicked on, and the world outside was suddenly very real. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice strong but steady. I stand before you today not just as the widow of Darius Williams, but as a woman who has fought for everything she has ever built. Today I will tell you the truth. The truth that has been buried for too long. The camera zoomed in as I spoke, my words measured but cutting. My husband left me to die. While I was fighting for my life in the hospital, he ran off to his mistress, leaving me with nothing but a trail of lies. What he didn't know was that I owned something far greater than any of his schemes could touch. What he didn't know is that I, Nia Oriaka Williams, own over $500 million in assets, not just in this country but worldwide. The press room buzzed as the words left my lips. My heart thudded, but it wasn't from fear. It was from a surge of power that pulsed through my veins, knowing that this was the moment. The moment they would realize I wasn't just a woman scorned. I was a woman who would burn the world down before letting it take from me. I don't want revenge, I continued, my eyes never leaving the camera. I want justice. I want the world to know that Darius Williams betrayed not just me, but everyone who ever believed in him. And for the record, I am not finished. The Oriaku legacy will continue, and I will see that no one erases what my family has built. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every word. I had waited years for this moment, and now it had come. I will fight for what's mine, I said, my voice steady and unyielding. And I will never let someone like him take it from me again. The room fell silent. The world was waiting. The press snapped pictures, the cameraman rolled, and the lawyers began preparing for the next steps. I had given them something to report on. Something they couldn't ignore. And as I stood there, the weight of the moment crashing over me, I knew this was only the beginning. Before I left the room, Osei leaned in close, his voice low. You did well, Nia. But we need to be prepared. There's more coming. He nodded. Let them come. And for the first time in a long time I felt like I was truly in control. The world moved strangely after the press release. The office was full of activity. Phones ringing, emails coming in faster than we could respond. The story had exploded like wildfire. News outlets across the country, even in Nigeria, had picked up the headlines. Wife of billionaire, Nia Oriaka Williams, exposes husband's infidelity, claims ownership of $500 million estate. The media had a way of distorting everything, but for once I didn't care. My truth was out there, and I wasn't going to hide from it anymore. But the pressure was real. From the moment we finished the press conference, everything shifted. Calls came from people I hadn't heard from in years. Relatives, old friends, even lawyers from different firms offering assistance with the estate. It was as though the world had suddenly remembered I was still standing, still breathing. Osei, Auntie Beezy, and I were holed up in the lawyer's office, sorting through the chaos. They had been handling the legalities, preparing for the inevitable battle. The courtroom battles were looming. The phone calls kept coming, but I knew better than to listen to the noise. I had a goal, to take back my life, my wealth, and my family's legacy. It started, Osei said, looking over some documents that had come in from the foundation. He glanced at Auntie Beezy, who had been unusually quiet for most of the day, her thoughts clearly running deep. What started? I asked, turning my attention to him. I hadn't heard anything new since the press conference, but his face looked strained, like a man walking into a storm. The board, Osei said, adjusting his glasses. They're circling. They want control. We knew it would come to this. Jade, Darius's mistress, she's already trying to move in on the real estate side. She's been calling vendors, sending emails as if she's the one in charge. I clenched my fists at the thought of her. The woman who had no shame, no respect for the life I had built with Darius. She had slid into his life with the ease of someone who had never known the meaning of loyalty. Darius hasn't even had the decency to call, Auntie Beezy said, her voice tight with bitterness. But he's watching. They all are. If they think they can run over you while you're still recovering, she shook her head. They're wrong. I nodded slowly, my anger rising like a wave. I've had enough. I'm not just going to wait here and let them destroy everything I've worked for. I'll go after them if I have to. Auntie Beezy's eyes softened. You've already done that. Now we need to plan carefully. The foundation is where the power is. If we take that down, the rest will follow. I sat back in my chair, taking a moment to breathe. The idea of dismantling everything that had been built in my name felt both exhilarating and terrifying. But there was no going back now. I had made my choice. I had already turned the tide. We need to hit them where it hurts, I said. The foundation is the heart of everything, the money, the properties, the influence. If I take that back, everything else will fall into place. Osei agreed, but his face was still clouded with concern. It won't be easy, Nia. You'll have to expose everything they've been hiding. We've been tracking their movements, but the longer we wait, the harder it will be to take them down. Auntie Beezy leaned forward, her sharp gaze meeting mine. You've been patient for too long. Now it's time to use the power you've always had. We will go public with the truth. Show everyone who they've been pretending to be. I felt a surge of energy, the quiet strength of my ancestors stirring in my chest. Then we do it today. No more waiting. I'm done hiding in the shadows. By the time the sun dipped low, we had a plan. The Foundation's board meeting was scheduled for the next morning, and we had enough to expose them for everything they were. I couldn't let Darius or Jade think they could get away with their betrayal. The stakes were higher than I ever imagined, but so was my resolve. The next morning we arrived at the Foundation's headquarters. The tall glass building, gleaming under the sunlight, stood as a symbol of everything I had built with my family's hard work. But inside, it was a house of cards waiting to collapse. The security guard at the entrance looked at me, his expression softening when he saw my lawyer, Osei, leading the way. Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you? Osei flashed his credentials, and the guard nodded, opening the door for us. As we walked past him, I couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment that would change everything. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The long mahogany table was surrounded by familiar faces, board members who had smiled at me at charity events, who had shaken my hand with false sincerity. Now they sat with an air of casual superiority, as if they thought they were untouchable. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, but I refused to let the fear show. This was my moment. Osei stood beside me as calm as ever, while Auntie Beezy took her seat at the far end of the room, her eyes sharp as ever. I walked to the front of the room, my steps deliberate and strong. The room fell silent as I took my place. Thank you for your time, I said, my voice cutting through the thick air. I'm sure you've all heard the news by now. But let me make it clear. I am no longer a passive participant in this family's legacy. I am in charge, and I'm here to take back what's rightfully mine. The board members exchanged nervous glances, their polite masks slipping for just a second. But I could see the fear behind their eyes. You think you can take everything from me, I continued. You think you can control what I've built by using my husband's weakness against me. But you forgot one thing. You forgot who I am. I reached into my bag and pulled out the stack of documents Osei had prepared. These were the things that would finally bring their empire down. I handed them over to the board members, one by one. Each paper was a damning piece of evidence, each one a nail in the coffin of their crooked schemes. Everything you've done behind my back, everything you thought was safe in the dark, will be exposed, I said. The transfers, the deals, the cover-ups, everything will be made public. You will not get away with this. One of the board members, a middle-aged man with slicked back hair, stood up, his hands shaking slightly. You can't, this is absurd. You're out of your mind. You'll ruin everything, yourself included. I turned to face him, my eyes steady and unwavering. I'm not ruining anything. I'm fixing it. The room erupted into chaos, voices raised in protest, panic spreading like wildfire. But I stood tall, my hands resting on the table, watching as their carefully constructed facade crumbled. It felt like the first breath of fresh air after a lifetime in a storm. Osei and I moved swiftly, setting up meetings with the press, contacting the relevant authorities, and preparing for the next steps. But I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years I felt free. The truth was out, and it was unstoppable. As we walked out of the boardroom, Auntie Beezy smiled, her eyes gleaming with pride. You've done it, Nia. Now the world will know what they've been hiding. I nodded, my heart still racing with excitement and anger. Now they know. But the fight isn't over. This is just the beginning. We were halfway to the elevator when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw a name I hadn't expected to see. Darius. I hesitated before answering. Yes. His voice came through the line, low and urgent. Nia, I need to talk to you. Please just let me explain. I didn't let him finish. There's nothing left to explain, Darius, I said, cutting him off. You chose this. You chose to walk away from me, from us. And now, I'm choosing to take back everything you tried to steal. I ended the call before he could respond, the finality of the action settling in my chest. There was no going back now. Everything I had fought for, everything I had protected was mine again. And this time no one was going to take it from me. As the elevator doors closed, I turned to Auntie Beezy and Osei, my resolve stronger than ever. We finish this, I said. And we finish it right. The next few days were a whirlwind. After the explosive boardroom confrontation, the media had picked up the story like wildfire. News outlets from Atlanta to Lagos were now following every step of the battle for the Oriaku estate. The calls, the messages, they kept coming in, a constant barrage of reporters, business partners, family members, and even strangers asking for comment. But through it all, one thing stood clear. I wasn't backing down. The lawyers worked around the clock to solidify my position. We filed motions, issued statements, and made sure every move was calculated. The foundation, Darius, and the board were all trying to keep up, scrambling to salvage their reputations and their control. But no matter what they tried, the truth was already out. The leaks, the financials, the property deals, they were all on record now. One morning, Osei sat across from me in the lawyer's office, his face grim. The foundation is making a last-ditch effort to settle this quietly, he said, his voice low. They're offering you a substantial sum in exchange for your silence. They want you to walk away from the estate and let them take over. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tightening around the glass of water in front of me. How much? $50 million. I stared at him, the weight of the number sinking in. $50 million. Sounded like a lot, and to most people it would have been a small fortune. But to me, it was nothing compared to what they had tried to take from me. To them it was a bribe, a way to shut me up. To me it was an insult. No deal, I said, my voice firm. Osei raised an eyebrow. You know they won't stop. They'll keep pushing, using every tool they have to break you down. Darius is already planning a smear campaign. He'll paint you as the villain. The media will eat it up. You'll be dragged through the mud. I don't care, I replied, my gaze unwavering. I'm not selling. Not for $50 million. Not for a single dime. I'll fight them until the very end. Auntie Beezy, who had been silent up until that point, spoke up, her voice full of quiet strength. You've been patient long enough, Nia. Let them bring their campaign. Let them try to break you. But remember who you are. You've come this far because you've never been afraid to fight for what's right. He nodded. I didn't fight to lose now. I'll make sure the world knows what they did. And when this is over, they'll wish they had never crossed me. It wasn't long before the first round of attacks began. Darius had been working behind the scenes, leaking stories to the press about my unstable condition, about the so-called suspicious actions I had taken after his departure. He'd even gone so far as to claim that I had been incompetent to manage the estate, despite the fact that I had been the one who had built it in the first place. But every time they tried to tear me down, I found a way to turn the tables. With the help of Osei and my legal team, we released a counterstatement showcasing the real facts. How Darius had been hiding his infidelity, siphoning off money, and manipulating our business interests for his own gain. We had the receipts, the emails, the contracts. Everything he had tried to cover up was now out in the open. But the press wasn't interested in the facts. They were interested in drama. They focused on the headlines, the emotional pull, the scandal. Wife claims $500 million estate after husband's betrayal. was the story they ran with. The narrative was framed, twisted, and sensationalized, but I had no control over that. What mattered was that the truth was there, buried under the media noise, but undeniable. I spent hours reading the news, sorting through the barrage of comments and stories, but the one thing that kept me going was the thought of Darius. He was the one who had pushed me to this point. He had thought he could break me, take everything from me, and walk away with a new life. But I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The real turning point came when we found out about the shady dealings Darius had been involved in. The board members, too, had their dirty little secrets. They had been in on it, making deals behind closed doors, using my name and my estate to fuel their greed. Darius had not only betrayed me personally but had dragged my family's legacy through the mud, all while lining his pockets with stolen funds. Osei's voice was low as he walked into the office that day, a new stack of documents in his hand. "We've got them," he said, laying the papers out on the table. "The financials, the transfers, the emails between Darius and the board members. It's all here." I looked down at the papers, my heart pounding. This was it. This was the smoking gun that would finally bring them all down. Auntie Beezy leaned over to look, her sharp eyes scanning the documents. "This is it," she said, her voice cold. "Darius, Jade, and the board. They've been stealing from you for years." I nodded, my jaw clenched. It's time to take them down. No more playing nice. We had the evidence. We had the truth. Now it was time to expose them to the world. The press conference was set for the next day. It wasn't just about the estate anymore. It was about exposing the corruption, the lies, and the greed that had been festering beneath the surface for so long. It was about showing the world that I wasn't just a victim of a broken marriage. I was a woman who had been wronged, and now I was fighting back. The moment I stepped up to the podium, the cameras flashed, and the room fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting, expecting me to falter. But I didn't. I had nothing to lose. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice strong and steady, "I stand before you today not just as a wife who was betrayed, but as a woman who has fought for everything she has ever owned. And I will fight to the bitter end to make sure that the truth is known." I paused, letting my words sink in before continuing. For years, my husband, Darius Williams, and the board of the Oriaku Foundation have been using my name, my legacy, to further their own selfish ambitions. They've been siphoning money, making illegal transfers, and trying to erase everything my family has worked for. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought I was weak. But I'm here to tell you that I am not afraid. The room was quiet as I let the weight of my words settle. I could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment when everything would change. "The truth is out now," I continued, "and I will make sure that every one of them pays for what they've done. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm demanding justice. And I won't stop until it's served." I turned to Osei, who gave me a small nod of approval. The next steps were already in motion. The media would spread the story far and wide. The board members, Darius, and everyone involved in the betrayal would have no choice but to face the consequences. I left the podium with the weight of the room behind me, but I didn't feel burdened. I felt light, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Auntie Beezy was waiting for me outside the conference room, her smile wide. "You did it," she said, pride in her voice. "Now let's make sure they feel the weight of their actions." Osei followed behind, his expression still serious. "This is just the beginning, Nia. They'll fight back. They'll try to discredit you. But you've done the hard part. You've exposed them." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "Let them fight. Let them try. But I won't back down. I'll make sure they pay for everything they've done." The battle was far from over. But for the first time in a long time I felt like I had the upper hand. The days that followed the press conference felt like a strange mix of triumph and tension. The media coverage had been relentless. Some outlets praised me for exposing the truth. Others painted me as a scorned woman seeking revenge. But it didn't matter. The truth was out, and I wasn't hiding from it anymore. Darius and the board members tried to spin their own narrative, but the public wasn't buying it. Every time they spoke, more people turned against them. Social media exploded with comments, memes, and hashtags. Some people called me a hero, while others called me vindictive. But I was no longer worried about what the world thought. What mattered was what I had set in motion. Osei had been working tirelessly, sorting through documents and coordinating with the media. His face was tight with focus, but I could see the pride in his eyes. He was seeing the plan unfold, and everything was falling into place. But there was something else, something deeper that weighed on me. The longer we sat in the lawyer's office, working through the paperwork, the more I realized that exposing Darius wasn't enough. Jade, the board, they were just the visible pieces of the puzzle. The real power was still out there, hidden in the shadows, waiting for its moment to strike. Auntie Beezy seemed to sense it too. She had been quiet lately, but her eyes were sharp as ever, constantly scanning the room as if she were waiting for something to happen. Something I wasn't seeing. It was late when Osei walked in with a set of new documents, his expression more serious than I had ever seen it. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice low. Auntie Beezy stood immediately, her hand going to her waist like she was ready to defend herself. "What kind of problem?" "Darius isn't the only one pulling strings," Osei said, looking over at Auntie Beezy and then back at me. "We've been digging through the finances, and we've uncovered something I didn't expect. Darius's financial actions were just the tip of the iceberg." I sat up straight, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean?" Osei slid a stack of papers onto the table in front of me. "These," he said, tapping the top sheet, "are the key. They show that while Darius was running around with Jade, someone else was quietly moving the larger assets. The land deals, the offshore accounts, the properties. None of it was handled by Darius. It was handled by someone from within the board. Someone very high up." Auntie Beezy's eyes flicked to the papers, and she narrowed her gaze. "Who?" Osei's fingers lingered on the paper. "Gerald Hayes. He was the one making the decisions, moving the funds behind the scenes. He's been working with Darius and the others, but we didn't know just how deep he was involved until now." I stared at the documents, my mind racing. Gerald Hayes. The very same man who had called me after my hospitalization, trying to smooth over the chaos, offering empty platitudes. The same man who had tried to manipulate me into walking away quietly. "So he's been playing both sides," I said, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "He's been taking control while the others kept me distracted with their lies." "That's right," Osei confirmed. "He's been quietly funneling money into off-the-books accounts. He's been using your name, Nia, to pull strings, to make deals that weren't just about the estate. It's bigger than that. This man has been laundering money for years." My blood ran cold. "We have to expose him. Now." Auntie Beezy's voice was steady. "No, Nia. Exposing him is only part of the plan. He's too well connected. We need to make sure the public understands the full scope of his actions. And we need to hit him where it hurts." I leaned forward, the weight of her words sinking in. "What do you mean?" Osei slid another document in front of me. "We've been tracking Gerald's financials too. There's a company he's been operating through. A shell company. It holds property that's tied directly to the offshore accounts. The land deals, those are just the beginning. There's a chain of ownership we can trace back to him. If we move on this now, we can expose everything. His illegal transactions, his connections, and his manipulation of the board." The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to come together. The web of lies and corruption stretched far beyond Darius. Gerald Hayes had been playing the long game, and he thought he could operate in the shadows forever. But we had him now, and I wasn't going to let him get away. "We'll expose him," I said, my voice sharp and certain. "But we need to be careful. We can't just throw these documents out into the world and hope for the best. We need a plan." Auntie Beezy nodded. "We'll go public with the full story. But this time we'll use the media to our advantage. We'll set up interviews, get the journalists on our side. And we'll tie Gerald's name to everything. The money laundering, the shady deals, the betrayal. When the public sees what he's done, he won't be able to run. He'll be finished. Osei's phone buzzed and he checked it quickly. It's happening. The media is already starting to pick up on the leak about Gerald. We're going to need to act fast. I stood up, my decision clear. Then let's move. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, emails, and frantic coordination. Osei had set up a meeting with a prominent investigative journalist, someone who had worked on high-profile cases before. He promised to help us take Gerald Hayes down, but we had to give him the ammunition to make it stick. Auntie Beezy worked alongside me, organizing our own statement for the press, making sure the facts were clear and irrefutable. We worked together like a well-oiled machine, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. The media frenzy that followed was nothing short of overwhelming. News outlets across the country were scrambling to cover the story, picking up every new detail we released. By the time we made our public statement about Gerald Hayes' involvement in the money laundering scheme, it was too late for him to cover his tracks. The story exploded. Headlines flooded social media. Gerald Hayes exposed for money laundering scheme, and Oriaku family legacy saved from betrayal, Darius and board members exposed. The public's reaction was swift. People were furious, not just with Darius, but with Gerald Hayes and the entire board. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and the arrogance of the people who thought they could get away with it. Gerald's lawyer issued a statement denying everything, but it was too little, too late. The evidence we had gathered was irrefutable, and the pressure from the media, the authorities, and the public was too much for him to handle. By the time the news broke, Gerald Hayes had been forced to step down from his position at the foundation. His assets were frozen, and an investigation was launched into his business dealings. As the dust settled, I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of what we had accomplished. It wasn't just a victory for me. It was a victory for my family, for the legacy I had worked so hard to protect. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally taken control of my life again. But as I looked out the window, the reality of the situation hit me. The fight wasn't over. Darius and Jade would try to make their next move. The board members who had been complicit would continue to scheme. But I was ready. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't going to let them take anything else from me. We had won this round, but there was still more to come. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the truth would unravel everything, had arrived. The media had exploded. Gerald Hayes had been taken down, and Darius had finally begun to understand that the game he'd been playing was over. But as I sat in the lawyer's office, listening to Osei go over the next steps, I realized that this was only one battle in a much larger war. We'd exposed the money laundering. We'd exposed the corruption. But Darius was still out there. Jade was still out there. And the foundation, despite its public collapse, still had its claws in too many places. They wouldn't just walk away. They would regroup, they would fight, and they would strike when I least expected it. Had to be ready. Darius is trying to make his move again, Osei said, his voice steady but urgent. We've received word from several contacts that he's trying to sell off assets under the table, using Jade as his front. He's also trying to pressure the board members to reinstate him, claiming that the foundation needs his leadership to survive. I clenched my fists. He doesn't get to come back from this. After everything he's done, after everything he's tried to take from me. He thinks he can just waltz back in. Auntie Beezy, who had been quietly listening in, finally spoke up. That's what men like him think. They believe they can tear things down, walk away, and then come back for a second helping when it's all cleaned up. But you, Nia, you've shown them that they can't rewrite the rules. You've already taken back your name. Now it's time to finish the job. Osei's phone buzzed, pulling his attention for a moment. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. It's worse than I thought. Gerald is not just making calls to the board. He's reaching out to investors, trying to convince them that you're unstable, that your mental health is in question. I felt my stomach tighten. What are they saying? What's his angle? They're saying you're unfit to manage the estate and that it's too risky to allow you to retain control, Osei explained. They're trying to undermine you, claim that your recovery is too slow, that you're not capable of managing the millions you control. And they're moving fast, setting up meetings behind closed doors. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table. So they're trying to take it all, even after everything we've exposed. Exactly, Osei said. But we've got something they don't have. Auntie Beezy's sharp eyes met mine. You're not the same woman you were when this started, Nia. You've shown them who you are now. I nodded, the anger and determination surging back in me. This ends now. That afternoon, we gathered the final pieces of evidence we needed. We contacted the press again, directly this time, bypassing the media chaos and going straight to the influencers and journalists who had been following our case. We prepared a statement that would lay everything bare once and for all, not just about Gerald but about Darius and the board. It was time for the final blow. We knew they were expecting a quiet surrender, a woman broken by the weight of her family's empire. What they didn't realize was that I had been quietly collecting the most important pieces of the puzzle. Documents, emails, testimonies from those who had seen the truth firsthand but were too afraid to speak up. Now I was ready to show the world what they had done. The next press release went out under my name, unfiltered, unafraid. The headline read, Nia Oriaka Williams fights back, exposes Darius and Gerald Hayes' corruption in $500 million estate battle. The release didn't just focus on the money. It was about power. About how people like Darius and Gerald had tried to control me, tried to control my family's legacy, all for their own gain. It was about the board members who had profited off my silence. It was about the hidden network of manipulation they had built, and how, through sheer will, I had cracked it open. I'm not just exposing their lies anymore, I told the press. I'm showing you how they've been using my name, my legacy, to further their own agendas. They've taken from me, but they've also taken from everyone who trusted them. I will not stand by and let them continue. The media flooded with news stories, all pointing to the depth of the corruption. The pressure mounted on the board. The investors began to turn, seeing the truth of what had been happening behind closed doors. The momentum was shifting, and it was shifting in my favor. But the fight was far from over. While the media painted Darius and Gerald as the villains, there was still the matter of the board. They were not going to roll over just because I had exposed them. They were desperate, scrambling to hold on to what little power they still had. That night, as the press reports continued to pour in, I received an unexpected call. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end was not. Nia, Darius's voice crackled through the phone. I need to speak to you, face to face. I could hear the desperation in his tone, the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. He had expected me to back down. He had expected the public to turn against me. But instead the world had rallied behind me. You've got nothing to say to me, Darius, I replied coldly. You made your choice. You walked away, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. What do you want? I want to fix this, he said, his voice shaky. I know I messed up, Nia. I was wrong. But I'm still your husband. We can fix this. Together. Fix this. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the stillness of the room. It's too late for that, Darius. You've already shown me who you really are. There's no coming back from that. Please, Nia, he pleaded. We have everything to lose. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I'll step down from everything. Just let me have a chance. I felt a surge of rage. This was the man who had betrayed me, the man who had chosen his mistress over his wife, who had thought he could get away with everything. Now, with the walls closing in on him, he wanted me to save him. I'm not your savior, I said, my voice steady. You chose this. You walked away from me, from us, and now you're paying the price. You don't get to rewrite this story, Darius. It's over. The line went silent for a moment. When he spoke again, It was with a quiet resignation. Then it's really over, isn't it? Yes, I said firmly. It's over. I hung up the phone, the weight of the decision settling deep within me. It was done. Darius was gone, and Gerald Hayes would face the consequences of his actions. But the board, there was still more to be done. The next day, we filed for full control of the estate. The legal motions were clear and unequivocal. I was taking back everything that had been stolen from me. The press release went out, and the public knew that the Oriaku family legacy was back where it belonged, in my hands. But just as we thought we had a firm grip on the situation, a new twist emerged. A last-minute attempt by the board to challenge my ownership had been filed. They weren't going down without a fight. But now I was ready. This time I would expose every last one of them. The board, Darius, Gerald, all of them. The truth was on my side, and I was going to make sure they could never escape it. As the clock ticked down to the hearing, I stood at the center of it all, no longer the woman they had once thought they could control. I was stronger now, and I was ready to finish what I had started. The morning of the hearing was like the calm before a storm. I had been through battles before, personal, financial, emotional, but this was different. This was my family's legacy on the line. This was my identity, my fight to protect everything I had worked for. The courtrooms weren't just cold buildings. They were battlegrounds where I would face down the men who thought they could strip me of everything. Osei and I sat in the lawyer's office early that morning, reviewing the final details. The media was already outside, waiting for the day's drama to unfold. I could hear the hum of voices in the hallway, the murmurs of reporters and photographers discussing the case. This wasn't just another legal proceeding. This was a showdown. Everything's set, Nia, Osei said. His voice calm but tight with the weight of the situation. He slid a folder across the desk. We've got the evidence, the financial records, the testimony. But I need you to remember something. This isn't just about what you've exposed so far. It's about the finish line. When we get in that courtroom, we need to stay focused. We need to make sure the board, Darius, and Gerald have nowhere to hide. I nodded, my fingers tracing the edge of the folder, feeling the weight of the papers inside. I knew Osei was right. This wasn't just about the documents. This wasn't just about the press coverage or the headlines. It was about making sure the law worked in my favor. It was about making sure I got what was rightfully mine. Let's end this, I said, my voice steady. I've waited long enough. Auntie Beezy entered the room, her sharp eyes scanning the space before settling on me. She had been quiet for most of the day, but I could feel her strength, her presence like a shield. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression said it all. Today was the day. Today we would finish what we had started. We're ready, Auntie Beezy said, her voice low but firm. Now we wait. The courtroom was a different kind of battlefield. The air was thick with tension, the room filled with the murmur of legal jargon, and the sound of heels clicking on the polished floors. When the judge entered, everything went silent. She was a woman of no nonsense, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Williams, and counsel for both sides, she said, her voice clear and commanding. We are here today to resolve the ongoing disputes regarding the Oriaku estate. I expect a fair hearing and for both parties to respect the proceedings. I took a deep breath and looked around the room. Darius was sitting at the table with his lawyer, Gerald Hayes by his side, the same arrogant smirk on his face. They were trying to play the victim, to paint me as a desperate woman trying to claim what wasn't hers. But I wasn't fooled. The truth was on my side. The judge called the case to order, and the first round of arguments began. Darius's lawyer stood up, trying to argue that I was unfit to manage the estate due to my medical condition, that my recovery was too slow and that I lacked the mental capacity to oversee the assets. The board had already filed their own motion, pushing for me to step aside in favor of someone they could control. But the evidence was against them. Every time they made a move, we countered with a piece of the puzzle they couldn't deny. Your Honor, Osei began, standing tall and confident, we are not here to debate Mrs. Williams's mental capacity. We are here to present the facts. Facts that prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that Mr. Williams and members of the board have been actively working to undermine her. They have used deceit, manipulation, and fraud to try to seize control of an estate that rightfully belongs to her. The courtroom was silent as Osei laid out the documents. Emails, contracts, financial records. All the evidence of Darius and Gerald's attempts to siphon money from the estate, to use their positions for personal gain. The room buzzed as each new revelation hit. The Foundation's illegal dealings. Darius's manipulation of the board. The shell companies Gerald had used to hide assets. The judge glanced at the documents and then at Darius and his lawyer, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Williams," she said, "how do you respond to these allegations?" Darius shifted in his seat, trying to hold his composure, but I could see the panic creeping into his eyes. He wasn't used to being on the defensive. He wasn't used to having to answer for his actions. He started, but his voice faltered. His lawyer quickly stepped in, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, we deny these accusations. They are based on incomplete information and misinterpretation of the facts. Mr. Williams has always acted in the best interest of his wife and the estate." The judge's gaze hardened. "Mr. Williams, it appears that your definition of best interest is quite different from the law's interpretation. You've been given a chance to present your case. But based on the evidence before me, I'm inclined to believe that your actions have been more about personal gain than about protecting your wife's interests." Darius's face turned red with frustration, but the truth was out now. There was no turning back. The courtroom erupted in whispers, but the judge held up her hand, silencing the room. "Enough. We will recess for the day. I will review the evidence presented and make my decision. You will hear from me tomorrow morning." That night I could hardly sleep. The weight of the day's events settled heavily on my chest. But there was a sense of victory in the air, even if it was only the beginning. The evidence was in our favor. The truth had been exposed. And now, it was only a matter of time before the judge ruled. Auntie Beezy paced the room, her phone pressed to her ear, listening to the updates from our team. "They're trying to settle," she said when she hung up, her voice full of disbelief. "They think if they offer you a deal, you'll back down." I felt a surge of anger. They don't get to make deals. They think they can buy me off, but they can't. This is about more than money. It's about respect. It's about taking back what's mine. Osei nodded, his voice calm as always. "The media will continue to report on this, and it's not going to stop. The public is with you, Nia. The judge sees the truth. But they'll try everything they can to make you second-guess yourself." "I won't second-guess myself," I said firmly. "I've come too far to back down now." The next morning we returned to court. The tension in the room was palpable as we waited for the judge's decision. Darius and Gerald were sitting at the table, their faces tight with anxiety. They knew this was the moment. The judge entered, and the room fell silent once again. She sat down, her gaze sweeping across the room before she spoke. "After reviewing all the evidence and hearing both sides, I have come to a decision." I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mrs. Nia Oriaku Williams," the judge said, "I find in your favor. The petition to remove you as the trustee of the Oriaku estate is denied. You will retain control of the assets and make all decisions related to the estate. The board members involved in these fraudulent activities will be held accountable, and further legal action will be taken against them. As for Mr. Williams, his actions have shown a clear disregard for the law, and I will recommend a full investigation into his activities." I didn't believe it at first. I sat there stunned, trying to process what the judge had just said. The weight of it hit me slowly. This was it. It was over. Darius had lost. Gerald had lost. The board had lost. I had won. The room erupted in applause. The media went wild with the news. The judge had made her ruling, and I had been vindicated. The truth had won. But as I stood up, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The weeks following the judge's ruling were a blur of triumph and retaliation. The media storm had calmed, but the ripples of the decision spread through every corner of my life. I had taken back my position as the rightful heir to the Oriaku estate. Darius and the board had been exposed for their actions. Gerald Hayes had been stripped of his influence, and investigations into his financial dealings had begun. But even as the public celebrated my victory, the darkness of the past still loomed over me. The war wasn't over. The foundation had been crippled, but the people behind it, Darius, the board members and Gerald, were far from defeated. They would fight back, and they would do everything they could to destroy me, to take back what they had lost. But I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to give them another chance to steal from me. The phone calls continued to come, but they were no longer from people trying to buy my silence. Now they were from lawyers, from the media, and from those who had once been too afraid to speak up. They were reaching out, offering their support, asking how they could help in bringing Darius and the others to justice. Osei and Auntie Beezy had been working non-stop, ensuring that the legal battle was airtight, making sure that every single piece of evidence was filed and properly documented. The case against Darius was far from over. The investigation into his actions, into the illegal deals, the manipulation, the fraud, it had only just begun. "Everything's in place," Osei said one morning. His eyes focused as he reviewed the documents. "We've got the witnesses, we've got the financial records, and we've got the press on our side. This won't be easy, but it's time to take them down once and for all." Auntie Beezy was pacing the room, her sharp eyes scanning the stacks of papers and legal briefs. "They're still trying to undermine you, Nia. You need to prepare yourself for what's coming next. They'll make their move soon." I sat back in my chair, my mind already racing ahead. I had no intention of letting them win. Not now, not after everything I had been through. But I knew Auntie Beezy was right. They wouldn't go quietly. The next phase of this fight would be even harder. The next few days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and strategizing. We were preparing for the final battle, the one that would bring down the last of Darius's supporters. His mistress, Jade, was still trying to manipulate the media, claiming that I had ruined his life. But no one was buying her story. The truth had a way of cutting through the lies, and I had every intention of making sure it did. By the time the next hearing arrived, I was ready. My lawyers had filed new motions, and the media had gotten wind of the fact that Darius's financials were under investigation. The public was hungry for the next chapter of the story, and they were eager to see Darius face the consequences of his actions. The courtroom was packed when I entered. The air felt heavy with anticipation. Darius sat at the defense table, his eyes bloodshot, his face tense. Jade was beside him, still holding on to him like a lifeline, but I could see the cracks in their facade. The truth was unraveling around them, and they couldn't stop it. The judge entered the room, and everything fell silent. She was a no-nonsense woman who had seen far too many cases like this one. But today I knew would be different. "We are here today to address the remaining charges against Mr. Williams, as well as to finalize the terms of Mrs. Oriaku Williams's rightful control over the Oriaku estate," the judge said, her voice calm but firm. I took a deep breath, my eyes focused on Darius. His confidence had drained away, and I could feel his desperation rising. He knew the walls were closing in on him. This was his last chance to try and salvage whatever he could, but it was already too late. Osei stood up first, presenting our case in a calm, measured tone. He laid out the evidence: the stolen funds, the fraudulent transactions, the manipulation of the estate. He detailed every action Darius and Gerald had taken to steal from me, to control the assets, to twist the system for their own gain. The room was silent as Osei spoke, the weight of his words settling over everyone. The truth had been laid out so clearly that there was no denying it. When Osei finished, it was time for Darius's lawyer to present his defense. But as he stood up and began to speak, it was clear he was scrambling. The defense was weak, full of half-truths and weak excuses. The more they spoke, the more the room seemed to close in on them. Then, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. The judge turned to Darius. "Mr. Williams, I've heard the arguments. I've seen the evidence. It's clear that your actions have not only been reckless but illegal. You've attempted to deceive this court, deceive your wife, and deceive the public. You will face consequences for your actions." Darius's face turned pale, his jaw clenching in frustration. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to save the business," he stammered. "Save the business?" the judge repeated. "By stealing from your wife. By manipulating your board members. By breaking the law. Your business is built on lies, Mr. Williams. And you will be held accountable for that." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Darius's eyes flicked to his lawyer, then back to me. His usual bravado was gone. He was defeated, and he knew it. The judge continued, her voice firm. "I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Williams's financial activities. The evidence presented here today leaves no room for doubt. Mrs. Oriaka Williams will retain full control of the estate, and I will issue a restraining order against Mr. Williams and his associates. You are no longer to have any involvement with the business or the estate." I sat back in my chair, the weight of the decision sinking in. I had won. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without the weight of fear on my chest. The truth had won, and I had taken back control. The judge banged her gavel, signaling the end of the hearing. The courtroom erupted in whispers, but I didn't hear any of it. I was too focused on the moment. The battle had been long, but it was over. Darius had lost. The board had lost. Gerald Hayes had lost. And I, Nia Oriaka Williams, had won. As the proceedings wrapped up, Osei turned to me, a look of satisfaction on his face. "It's over, Nia. You've done it. They can't touch you now." Auntie Beezy, who had been watching the proceedings with her usual intensity, smiled. "You didn't just fight for yourself, Nia. You fought for your family's legacy. And that, my dear, is something they can never take away." I looked around the courtroom, feeling a sense of peace settle in. The battle was over, but the journey wasn't finished. My family's legacy would continue, and I would make sure it remained strong, unshakable. As I walked out of the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of victory. I had stood tall when they tried to tear me down. I had fought with everything I had, and now I was free. But the war had taught me something important. Strength is not just about surviving the storm. It's about knowing when to stand firm, even when the world tells you to kneel. And as I stepped out into the light, I knew I had finally found the strength to take back everything that was mine. The weight of the victory hung in the air like the calm after a storm. The legal battle had ended. Darius, Gerald, and the board had lost. The Oriaku estate was officially mine again, and no one could take it from me. But even as the dust settled, I knew this was only the beginning. There was no going back to the life I had before. No returning to the days when I was the wife standing quietly behind her husband, trusting that everything would be fine.
Well,
I had learned too much, seen too much, and fought too hard to be anything other than the woman I was now. Strong, unyielding, and in control. The phone calls kept coming, but now they were different. They were filled with congratulations, praise for my strength, and offers of help from those who had watched the battle unfold from the sidelines. Some of them were old friends, people I hadn't heard from in years, eager to offer their support. Others were business partners who had seen the power shift in my favor and wanted to align themselves with me. But there were still those who would never give up. The people who had been complicit in Darius's schemes, the ones who had stood by while my life crumbled, were still out there, lurking in the shadows, hoping for a chance to strike. Osei had been working around the clock, handling the legalities, ensuring that every piece of the puzzle was locked in place. Auntie Beezy had been my rock, offering advice and wisdom when I needed it most. Together, we had built something stronger than just a legal case. We had built an unshakable foundation. But even with all the victories, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to come. The court battle was over, but the game was still being played. And there was one person who still had the power to bring it all crashing down. Darius. I knew he wasn't going to go quietly. He had lost everything, but his pride was still intact, and pride, I knew, was dangerous. It could make people do things they would never have considered before. It could make them lash out, hurt the ones they loved, and destroy everything in their path. The first sign that Darius was planning something came in the form of an anonymous message. It was simple, a short text that read, "You haven't won yet. I'm not done. D." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The message was brief, but it sent a chill down my spine. He was out there, plotting, waiting for the right moment. I had known it was coming, but seeing the message made it real. "Don't let him play you," Auntie Beezy said, her voice steady, though her eyes were sharp. "Darius is like a snake that sheds its skin to survive. He'll try to turn the tables, but you know what he's capable of. Keep your distance, Nia. And stay focused." Osei was already on the phone, making calls, getting the latest updates from the lawyers and security teams. "We'll track his movements. He's probably planning something public. Something to try and ruin your reputation again." "I won't let him," I said, my voice firm. "I've already been through the worst he can throw at me. This time I'm ready." But as the hours passed, the sense of unease grew. Darius was too quiet. He was plotting something, but what? The silence felt more dangerous than his outbursts ever had. And then it happened. It was late when the knock came on the door. I had just finished a meeting with my PR team, preparing for the next phase of the campaign to rebuild the foundation's reputation. I was exhausted but determined. My life was moving forward, and nothing was going to stop me now. But when I opened the door, I wasn't expecting to see Darius standing there. "Hello, Nia," he said, his voice low and steady. "I think it's time we talked." I couldn't hide my surprise. "What are you doing here, Darius?" He stepped into the hallway, his eyes scanning the room behind me. "I want to fix things. I made a mistake. Big one. But I want to make it right. I'll do anything." The words hung in the air like a sick joke. After everything he had done, after everything I had lost, he was standing in front of me asking for redemption. "Make it right," I repeated, my voice incredulous. "You walked out on me. You betrayed me. You tried to steal from me. And now you want to make it right? After everything?" He winced, taking a step toward me, his face a mask of regret. "I was stupid, Nia. I let my pride get in the way. I let Jade and everything else cloud my judgment. But I've learned, changed. I'm not the same man you married." I shook my head, anger flaring. "No, Darius. You're still the same man. You just lost everything and now you want to play the victim. Well, I'm not buying it." He stepped back, as if my words had hit him harder than he expected. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to forget. But I need you to understand something. I've been trying to fix what I've broken for months. I've been making deals to get you back what's yours. I'm not trying to take from you. I'm trying to give it back." For a moment I stood there, torn between the man I had once loved and the man who had betrayed me. But the truth was clear now. There was no going back. There was no fixing what had been broken. "You can't fix this," I said, my voice cold. "What you did was irreparable. You don't get to come back into my life just because things didn't go the way you planned." His eyes hardened, the regret vanishing behind a mask of defiance. "You'll regret this, Nia. You'll regret not listening to me. I'm not done, and neither are you." The door slammed behind him, and I stood there, the weight of his words still hanging in the air. The next morning I woke to a different kind of storm. The media had gone wild overnight. Darius had gone on a public tirade, claiming that I had stolen the estate from him and that I was trying to ruin his life. He accused me of being unstable, of being a vindictive wife who was using